Thanks for joining me on the adventures of a real estate broker. I hope you enjoyed our time together as much as I did. If you laughed, learned something, or just had a good time, do yourself a favor and subscribe to the podcast. A big shout out to our sponsor, RE/MAX Prestige Properties, for making this all possible. Remember to leave a review if you enjoyed the show. It helps more people find us. Until next time, keep it real, keep it fun, and keep exploring the adventures in your neighborhood. I'm Daniel Berger, your New York realtor, and I'll see you in the next episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Adventures of a Real Estate Broker with Daniel Berger. I'm your host, Daniel Berger. Today, we have a very special guest. We're going to sell it like champagne today. We have Jasper Champagne, we used to work together. Now we're at different companies, but we're still working together. We actually speak to each other a lot and learn from each other. And so with that, Jasper Champagne, who has won so many awards, he's a younger real estate broker agent, but certainly one that as seasoned as myself and so many other people. So welcome, Jasper. How are you today?
I'm good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. So, this is my third podcast, and I wanted to get you on right away because we always have great conversations together. We're about real estate, about life, and other things in general. So, thank you so much for taking the time out to coming on the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me, man.
You're a true success story. You're a true New Yorker, born in New York. You're of Dominican descent.
Reading a little bio of me. You want me to
Yeah, a
just
little.
myself?
But what's crazy about you, though, in your home growing up in New York, you only spoke Spanish for the first 8 years of your life.
It was actually about 10 years. But yeah, I mean, it's just like it's a first generation American story. Like I feel like I'm not like super special in a way, but like I had a background that I feel like a lot of other people currently have, where your parents come from a different country and they move here, and all of a sudden you are born here and they don't speak the language, and you got to just like figure out that portion of life. So I had to do that. And honestly, it made me probably a stronger person long term. And hey, I'm bilingual, right? So that's like a plus.
It is a huge plus. I am not bilingual. I spoke English until I was 8, and then I spoke English after I was 8. And I don't have language is not my thing, but I'm sure if I worked harder at it and was pushed to do it, maybe. But being in America, being in New York, speaking more than one language, and especially speaking Spanish, is an amazing thing that certainly in my job working as a real estate agent, speaking Spanish would be better for me, right? Because it would be nice to be able to speak what the clients feel more comfortable in. So that certainly has helped you. But what's interesting is what you just said is that's why you're Jasper and why you're so good, because you're just like, well, that's the hand I was dealt, and I'm just going to work with it. And that's a great testament to who you are. Some people like to complain about things, and not you. You generally say, tell me what the rules are, and I'm going to do the best that I can. But yeah, I'm, I guess, a little different because I had great grandparents and grandparents who came from another country here. So it's a little bit removed, but you're much closer to it, which is why America is so great, is because people can come from other lands and then become American and be here. And it's the fabric of why we're so different and special. And so that's really great. But you're also, what I've seen with you is that it's not just that you're also a little bit of like the leader of your family. I've seen in different conversations we had and different things in life, your family looks to you for guidance, sometimes even for resources. And for being such a young person, that's certainly a burden that I never had to really deal with. But you don't really take it as like, you don't really take it as a burden. You just take it, that's what it is, and you move on from there and you adjust.
I mean, my mom is in her 70s at this point, so she's like an older mom compared to age wise. And my dad is in his 60s. So I feel like at the end of the day, you just have to grow up. I just had to grow up a little sooner, which is fine. I've always been like the person to do things. I've always hung out around older people my entire life. And I feel like family is family. So when you got to step it up, you just step it up. It is what it is.
Yeah. Well, You certainly grow older and matured in a way, but you're also like this world traveler. You're getting asked to speak at certain conventions. I love following you on Instagram because I just saw that you were in Portugal at a real estate convention. Tell me one of the highlights of being in Portugal and that trip.
Well, I currently work for eXp Realty Luxury, so we're expanding all across Europe and we've expanded pretty big. We're one of the fastest expanding companies. We are very pro tech. So just kind of meeting the world leaders in those different countries. Like I've met the world leader in Dubai, the person who started in Italy, the person who started in Portugal, like just like different things like that. I feel like real estate, a lot of people focus so locally and my thing is, I don't want to focus nationally. I want to focus internationally. Like, I want to focus everywhere that I can to build those relationships because I feel like the one thing that we always forget as agents is that everything is global. Like, it's something that you really have to kind of think about. Like, you have a client who just moved to this country, etc., but they have family in, let's say, Dubai and they have family in England. Like you can always use that to your advantage and help them build a stronger foundation and just teach them skills from other countries, which will help you eventually grow as a person and them hopefully grow economically wise and just build a portfolio in different parts where they want to.
That's what I'm going to get into a little bit of some of the things that we even did together in New York. But I have a couple of questions just to get into. So I know that you started as a real estate assistant. That was when you were really young. You're still young. But give me some of the memorable experiences or lessons that you learned when you were a real estate assistant.
The biggest lesson I learned is how to multi-manage a lot of people. I was working for six people at the time, so I was kind of just scattered all over the place. And I guess when you're younger, you really don't think this is kind of abnormal because it's like it was one of my first jobs. I was like 19, you know? But I learned to understand different personality types and adapt to them because I feel like as many personalities like as I caught while working on the team, I also had probably 10 to 20 plus other personalities at the same time because it was their clients. And if it wasn't their clients, it was the listing agent or this or that. So just learning how to manage and control a situation and speak to different people was really important for me to learn at that time.
We've had many conversations about listing agents that we together have had to work with, and we're like, well, what are some strategies to get them to answer their phone? I mean, some people don't do that. And you're like, and so that's why, you and I talk a fair amount in text and whatever, but it's like, oh, have you worked with this person? And what do you think's going on? Or what do you think this means if they're saying there's an AO? Because there's some people out there, they're like, oh, they do that all the time because they're trying to drive up the price. And so it's like we're trying to strategize. So understanding differences of each people is so important. I do think that you do an amazing job with that. So
I think
that's helped grow your business.
I think it's just also about being very direct. Like, I feel like there's a lot of people that I've seen in this industry that don't have that personality where they feel comfortable just like reaching out. Like, I'll call you and I'll say, is this going to work out? Is it not going to work out? Like, I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste your time. So I
Right.
feel like when you kind of build to that level, it takes a lot of like courage to do so and also just learning how to talk to people in a way that is respectful at the same time while you're doing it is very uncommon nowadays.
I think also people can smell desperation. So if you're so desperate for a client or so desperate for something, it makes it harder to achieve success. I think I agree 100% with what you're saying. You're like, I'm Jasper, I'm selling it like champagne, and I'm busy. So if I'm going to give you my time and you're going to give me your time, let's make it productive. And and that's I think what people can see about you that you certainly can have fun, and I've certainly seen a lot of great Instagrams of you out in clubs and doing whatever. But you take your job so serious, and your clients are so important about like what time you're going to make time for when your clients want to see things, and you always give them the time of day.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super adaptable. I think at this point, I've learned how to manage my time in a way where I still want, like, I'm in my 20s. I want to live in my 20s, but I also want to work and be extremely successful at the same time. So finding a balance for me, like, I'm the type of person that will be like, I could go out until 2 in the morning. But if I have a 9 a.m. appointment, I will be at that 9 a.m. appointment. No excuses. So I feel like a lot of people, unfortunately, it's a work ethic thing. Like you want to, if you don't have the drive, the motivation, like there was an agent that told me recently, like someone asked her what keeps her so motivated. She's been doing this for like 15 years. And she said, because I'm hungry. And the person said, I don't know what that means. And I said, oh, because you have that drive where you want to keep working. And she goes, yeah. And I don't want to have to look at the price when I'm going out shopping. And I don't want to have to worry about my bills or what's going on. And some people lose that aspect. And I feel like growing up in the economic background where I grew up extremely underprivileged, no money, like my parents were constantly thinking about bills, etc. My dad worked probably between 60 and 72 hours a week because like he just had to.
Right.
Like, I don't want to experience that ever. I don't want, if I have kids, I don't want them to experience that ever. And I feel like seeing that and growing into who I've become is a big part of that because what drives me is the fact that I think of my past and I don't want it to be anything like my future.
And what's so good about what you're doing is that you're not asking for a handout. You're not like, woe is me, I'm working really hard. You're doing something. And so, that's actually why we're still not really working together. Was we both have this huge respect for each other. We still talk to each other all the time. You have a very global view. And that's what you said about people from all over. You wanted to be in New York City. I mean, it's the city that never sleeps. There are bigger deals in New York City, right? So if you're able to get there, that's going to help you connect. A lot of what I try to talk about in the podcast is seeing people. And that is, you and I always talk about how about this? Do you know this person? How do you connect? And that's how I seen that's also how you get a lot of referrals, is that, again, you're still in your 20s. I'm so old I can't even remember my 20s. Okay. So, but
You
like
should remember, you have one of the best memories that trust
um,
me. He'll like write something down that happened in like date, time, freaking like 12 years ago. Like he's joking around here.
just like a memory like an elephant, but it's the drive for the hard work. And so I grew up very middle class as well. My parents were school teachers. So, but I'm not going to like, that's blessed. And not that you're not blessed. So that's not even fair to say that. But my point is that I didn't have to worry about like a medical bill being paid for or food. Like my parents did that. I was able to go to school. Yours was different. Yours was more like what my father grew up very poor. My father actually grew up in Washington Heights. So his dad owned a bodega, basically. He owned basically a bodega. And it was funny because the name of it was Stop and Shop. And you would, only if they could have trademarked that, right? But
Yeah,
they
you should
didn't.
have followed
You
suit. Someone
exactly.
must
But
have walked by and saw a Stop and Shop. Someone from Park Avenue drove up and was like, that's it.
Exactly. So, but my father worked in his father's bodega basically and learned. And so so the goal in our country really is that each generation builds on what their family did and the sacrifices of that, what our family, you're not asking for anything. You're just trying to build on it. And that's really, again, what makes America so great. And also, but it's about the people and the hardworking people. I know that in 2018 you decided to get your real estate license. What made you go from I'm going to be in a real estate assistant to like, you know what? I want to do this myself.
So one thing I noticed was I had so many jobs, like if I look at my taxes back then, I had probably like 12 to 13 W-2s. I was always constantly doing, or 1099s. I was always constantly doing working maybe 5 to 7 days a week. And I was never getting paid enough to do all the things I was doing. So I had someone that had recently purchased something and I helped them through the experience, but I didn't help them through the experience in a way that I got compensated well enough, but I felt like I did most of the work, you know? I realized at the time, like, I actually enjoy doing this. Like, I enjoy it. I feel like no one just, I mean, maybe there are some people, but no one just inspires. And it's like when you're a 7-year-old, oh, I want to be like a real estate agent. Like no one, I don't think there's a lot of kids that do that. Like, yeah, I want to go open some doors and meet some strangers and pick up calls and deal with their issues that are up and down and deal with their divorce and deal with their family funeral. No, people want to be like a doctor, a lawyer, and something that they feel like are going to make a lot of money, or some people are like aspirational, like I want to be an actor or a ballerina or XYZ. But like when you find that person that tells me, hey, I wanted to be a real estate agent when I was 7 years old, you let me know because I really would love to meet them.
Well,
But
I think one thing though is that with the proliferation of the real estate agents being glorified on television, maybe that is something now, which is actually funny because people, when you see those shows, while they're fun, it's so far from what our reality really is, but it does make for good television. So maybe younger people who are watching that might now aspire, but certainly me as a 55-year-old and you as a under 30, it wasn't really a thing. So you're right. I didn't come into real estate. I'm now like 8 or 9 years into real estate. I didn't come into it later in life because I never would have been like, oh, I want to be a real estate agent.
and one thing I want to clarify with people is if you are on a show like that, like there are some actual really successful agents, but like if you really look at the history of like let's say $1 million listing, for example, there's a very successful agent that built their career off of it and maybe had 2 to 3 sales prior to that before the show.
Right.
So I think that when you want to be on television and do real estate, and I'm sure that there are extremely successful people that are there as well. Like they've built gigantic teams like Frederick Eklund and Ryan Serhan and all these other people, etc. But when you are doing that and you're seeing that, you're not seeing the nitty gritty. You're seeing what is great for television. You are not inspiring to be maybe a real estate agent. You might want to think that you want to be a reality star, which is like a very big difference. Like, and I'm sure that once you hit that reality star level, you can use it in order to build yourself a real estate career because you are then an entrepreneur and a public figure, and you can use that in order to build your career. But a lot of these agents that if you do some research on, and it's like the same thing I think of like Instagram, like some people I've had people say to me that they're losing listings because of all these agents on Instagram, and I find it so funny. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like you, and then I look at it and I'm like, okay, so she promoted someone else's listing. She promoted someone. Just read through the BS.
Right.
At the end of the day, a lot of people, no one ever shows you. I mean, some people do, but majority of people don't show you the negativity in their life. They don't show you when an offer, a deal fell through, and or unfortunately, like I had a family death this year. I didn't post anything about it on social media because I didn't want people to look at me like I was weak, like I was going through something, and then they don't call me because I was afraid that my business will go down from that, which sucks. But
Right.
at the end of the day, I can't show, I have to show the things that inspire people, not the things that are negative. I did a whole social media clear if people notice. And I used to want to be 100% myself. I used to post pictures at the club at 2 in the morning, like nothing crazy, but
Right.
like a Halloween costume, Santa Con costume, this and that. I had someone look at me and they were like, it's actually a client that bought for me, which is really funny. They bought like a $1 million house. I'm not going to disclose where actually, and she's a social media brand expert for high-end companies. And she looked through my Instagram and she's like, you are so lucky I didn't see your Instagram because I would have never hired you. And you're like one of the sweetest people that I've ever met.
Right. So,
So
so social media is a tough thing. I mean, well, first of all, we were talking about the television. It's like I think Selling Sunset is one of the shows that if they've done an analysis like in our real estate magazines, and some of the people have done zero or like one or two. So it's really more setting the scene. But social media it's good, but it can be really negative as well because as you said, what's real, what's not real, as opposed to the actual facts. So it's really interesting because why Jasper is so good is because of Jasper. And if you like to go to SantaCon
I've
and
aged out
do,
of that category at this point.
but you know what I'm saying, or and Halloween stuff and go out and wear nice, interesting costumes, right? That is, you should be allowed to be you, but I totally understand. And what's interesting is having the client that's the branding expert and the social media expert. She's also talking about it from like a corporate America is a little bit different. So they come at it from a different. So there's probably a fine balance though, where you can actually be Jasper show the things that you're doing. And then, but like if there is something that's negative, to try to frame it in a way that, because people, we are people, right? So like if loss of a grandparent or something like that, I'm going to want to reach out to you, and I'm going to maybe want to send something because that's how people are. So it is, I think there's a fine
You
line in
actually
there
did.
somewhere.
So that was really sweet. You're honestly, you're one of the few people I tell my actual personal life to. So it's like you were super sweet and very kind at the time. And I was honestly, I was just really grateful for everything that occurred at the time. So like not grateful for the death, clearly. I mean, like my birth dad died. I'm actually was adopted by my biological aunt, and unfortunately my birth dad passed away. He had no other children, so I can't, not that I know of.
Right.
Let me just buy. But so I had to handle that situation, and it was one of the hardest things I think I went through in a very long, and I've been through a lot. Like
Right.
spoken to him for probably 6 or 7 years, and you were really kind. Like you sent, I don't remember what you sent, to be quite frank, but I remember I was like really, you were the only, you guys sent the package actually. You were the
Right.
only people that actually sent me something, which was extremely sweet.
I mean, in the end of the day, while we're doing social media, so no one's asked me to do my television show. It's probably a good thing. So having a podcast is a way to network. So it's connecting people, is a way to network. And it's just, and it's really, I love that I can have this great conversation with you and then have something that you can use and I can use. And so if people want to see things, we're just real people. It's just Danny and Jasper. That's what this is. We're both doing, we do okay on our, in our real estate world, right? You and I are both kind of selling a lot, but we're selling a lot because we're working really hard. And so when you decided to do more Manhattan, that's not something I'm deciding more to be Westchester, Rockland, Putnam, Connecticut. So but I love that you're Mr. New York now, because like I'm going to have deals and people and buyers, and then I can say, work with Jasper. And an example that I wanted to say is my largest deal ever was one that we worked together on. And a hedge fund manager who's friends with, it's connecting. He's friends with a good friend of mine who's one of my clients, wanted something in the city. It was 3 years ago, so you're even younger, right? And so we both were younger. And he's a hedge fund manager managing several $billion of funds. And I'm like, yep, we're working with Jasper. You know what? You did an amazing job. And so together we were able to, you were doing the showings. And it was funny because you talked, it was someone on Ryan Serhant's team, Talia. And it was just like, how do we work with like these people that are on television basically? And how do we work? And we have our client, and it didn't go easy. There was a lot that happened in that transaction, but how
I
do we
think,
be professional about it and get it done?
yeah, I think that we had to jump through a couple of obstacles in that transaction, but I also think it's something that nowadays is gonna be happening constantly. Like people are telling me like, "Oh, are you afraid of like the NAR lawsuits and XYZ?" And I'm like, if you are a agent and you've been doing this, and I've made significant amount of sales. I've done over 100 transactions at this point, and I'm probably doing between, I would say, 30 to 40 transactions a year. So there are certain things where you have to think outside of the box. You have to find ways to make things work. You have to be able to coordinate people's different personalities and work. You have to have reasoning with understanding that there are certain things outside of people's control that they cannot control. And it could be a difficult client, a difficult third party. It could be someone that you wouldn't even understand, or an attorney, or this or that, or not even the person. It could be Con Edison. It could be whatever it could be, you know? But the situation is, there's a reason why we have been very successful in a way. I would assume it's because we think so outside of the box, and we try to find a solution and focus on that. There are people that I've met that they will focus on the problem and it will eat them alive. And one of
And
the greatest things because when I was working with you, like I was working prior to that at a very corporate office where there was no thinking outside of the box. There was like, this is corporate, this is how you do it. That you can't say this, you can't try to help this, you got to just let the attorney handle it, etc. And when I switched to your office, I learned to focus a lot more on solutions. I learned that whether it's reasonable or not reasonable is not a it's not going to matter if you just ask the question. I learned how to try to help people figure out problems versus focusing on those problems and then saying, oh, I can't deal with this, which I think that's one of the reasons why you're so successful, because you just think so logical and you try to find a solution for every single problem versus a lot of other agents I've met, especially in the area that you predominantly cover, which is Westchester. They just won't even call you back. They're like, I don't know what to do. They won't call you, they won't respond to you, they won't figure out a solution. And you're like one of the best thinkers I've ever met in my life.
That's very generous of saying that. I mean, I did create my brokerage to be able to be an outside the box thinker, not corporate. So I do appreciate that you felt that way working together because like in our example on our the property that we had our client buy, a $4 million property in Soho, we're about ready to do the walkthrough and there's no kitchen. The seller ripped out the entire kitchen, a gas stove kitchen, and the walkthrough, it smelled like gas. We had to open the windows. They were trying to like light. We made them put the kitchen back. They didn't do it properly, and there was almost like a building almost blew up. We had to open the windows. And you and I, how did we work through? So that apartment no longer could have gas. Con Ed came in and said, you need to do a stress test in the building in order to get gas back in this apartment. The building doesn't, it's a co op. The building doesn't allow stress tests. How do we now continue with the deal for an apartment that no longer has gas and all the appliances ripped out? And it's outside the box thinking that you and I both together did to keep the deal alive. And the reason why we kept the deal alive was because that's what our buyer wanted. He still wanted it, but we had to make adjustments to make it seem fair for him.
And I think, to be quite frank, with that entire difficult situation, just want to clarify, I don't think it was to the fault of the agents in general. And I think when home sellers are selling, there's a certain, and especially at a certain asset situation of having a lot of money and running a lot of companies, certain people think that they can get away with a lot. And, or actually, I want to clarify because it was a foreign seller. Culturally, the aspect was that you can take the appliances, is from my understanding. And I feel like a reasonable thing to have done would have been to follow what was in the contract.
Right.
But I think it was completely out of certain people's controls, and we never really got a full story of that. But our real focus was, what does the client want to do?
Right.
Do you want to move forward? Do you not want to move forward? I was at a point where I just straight up told the client, I was like, you want to walk away? Let's walk away. Like, we can go in a bunch of apartments. But I said to him specifically, do you see anything else that you like more? Which is a big question I do constantly for people. And it's one of the things that I feel like I wish someone would have told their client that at times when they're purchasing a home. And he just said he couldn't. This was like what he wanted, this property based on what was on the market, location, idea. And we resolved an issue that I think that a lot of other agents may have just, they would have thrown the deal out. They would have not figured out a solution. It would have been a very difficult experience for a lot of other agents, to be
Right.
quite.
I mean, for us, it was a cash deal. Our buyer wanted it. Our job is to represent the buyers. Yeah, I didn't mean to infer that the agents did anything. Who did it was actually the seller of the apartment. And it was cultural, right? So this was a Chinese national or someone that was from China. And in China, maybe like some other countries, you don't really get what's in the apartment. You get the apartment, but nothing else that's in. So he just said, I can take this and I can sell it.
You
There's
don't
a
get
lot
the
of
appliances, quote unquote.
but there's a lot of repercussions when you rip out gas things without using plumbers. And so we had to defend our client. But in the end of the day, we were both like, you know what? If you want another property, let's keep looking. You're right. Our client wanted this place. So, but that's what attracted him to the place initially. So, how do you come up with strategies that can get it where our client feels satisfied that he's compensated for what happened, and that the seller's like, okay, at this point, it was already board approved. We were like about to do the walkthrough. So that was a very interesting case. I loved working with you on that. It's a good story for us, and it also allows that going forward, any place, any buyers and sellers I have in the city, I know that we can work together again. So again, it was fantastic.
Honestly, it was a good experience for the books.
Exactly. Another thing about Jasper that not everyone knows is that you're into acting. And I've seen a lot of your headshots. You go to auditions. Where are you with that now? Maybe it's describe a little bit that and say, how do you balance your artistic pursuits in a real estate career?
I think right now, to be quite frank, like I'm focused more on real estate. Like 90% of the time I'm doing real estate. Some people reach out to me from my past because I was auditioning and acting. I'm still a union actor, SAG-AFTRA. They reach out to me and they're like, "Hey, I have something that's perfect for you because, you fit this demographic category XYZ." And I will do it because I honestly love it. Like I love exploring and building characters and thinking in a different way and turning into another character. And I'm very big right now on like I love improv. People find it so weird that I do, but I think it's honestly one of the core thinking strengths that I think everyone should have because it's how you learn to relate to a topic without even having to know anything about the topic. Where do you find the common ground? Because you build on what other people are talking about. It's a good conversational thing. And I think a lot of people that want to go into public speaking or communications should definitely take some improv. I feel like my current situation is balance wise. Like I love real estate so much that I've kind of put acting on the back burner, but it's something that in the future I do want to focus a little bit more on. But right now I'm really focused on just my client growth, especially in the city. I have a lot of new clients in Manhattan. It's become a buyer's market there. It is a seller's market still in the suburbs, but eventually things will trickle down, hopefully, or hopefully not. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with acting.
Okay, great. There was somebody that was looking to get into the luxury real estate market in New York City. What are some of the suggestions that you would give to either somebody who's new in the business or somebody that's trying to get into that part of
I
the
would
business?
I would say stop focusing on just saying, I want to go into luxury. I think it's luxury is I'm at eXp Realty Luxury because I love the design. I love the what they've done with the company's logos and what they're putting in and the marketing team and the strategy. I love that. But luxury for me has never been the reason why I wanted to do real estate. And I also I think that if you are a real agent, like an agent that is working year round, there are only so many few agents that quote unquote will be able to sit around for a $2 to $4 million buyer because that's what they're used to, because that's a network thing. But if you're a person that is building yourself and you want to be a realtor, real estate agent, etc., you have to stop saying, I want to be in this category. And I think you have to say, I want to just work and figure things out because if you cannot handle a $200,000 transaction, you will not be able to handle a $2 million transaction or a $4 million transaction. And I've met agents that all they do is sell, quote unquote, luxury homes. They come from extremely successful families. They didn't have to, a lot of them, not all of them, right? To clarify, but it's not always their main source of income. When you have family money or marry rich or XYZ, you have a lot of other options. So they're
Another option, though, is that it's about your network. So that if you have a network of people that are buying $3 to $5 million homes or 1 million, right? And those are the people that are calling you, then you're not really working on the other things like you and I are bootstrap people. I'm doing a piece of land now for $25,000 in Connecticut because you know why? Person asked me to do that. People are clients. You don't try to work for the amount of money. You work for the transaction and working with the person because then you do that, other good things will happen from
and
that.
and I will tell you, last year I had a buyer buy a $2.3 million commercial warehouse with me in Long Island. That client is still a client to this day. I've done probably over 10 transactions just with him at this point. I just put up a rental for him, right? He was a client that started and he wanted a $400,000 home in Orange County. And I was like, okay, do you want me to go up there with you? And he's like, yeah, on
Right.
you. And I was like, oh, okay. So I guess we're going to Orange County. He's like, And I just figured out where he wanted it. He wanted it close to Legoland because that was a big opportunity coming up. And I thought it was going to be a small one-time deal, etc. We're both Dominican, so I really wanted to have that network. And he was just such a kind person. Like, I just wanted to make sure whoever he went to, he had an extremely good experience. And he just said, I wanted to work with you, etc. So I was like, all right. So we went up there, and that was a couple years ago. We closed on that house. I didn't know his financial situation or anything.
Right.
He just turned to me at the closing and he goes, hey, I want to buy another house in like 6 months. And I was like, oh, okay. Like in 6 months? He's like, yeah, I need another house in 6 months. I've already talking to the loan person. I just need to pull a couple of things out of funds. But in 6 months, but we need to be in contract in like 2 months because I want to make sure we actually close in six. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then from there, he told me we closed on that house. He said, hey, I need a good investment, a rental. I have family. I want to start building my portfolio a little bit more in real estate. I had a listing come on the market from a couple contractors that I constantly work with, and it was a 3 bedroom house. And sorry, a 3 family house. And I said, hey, I have this listing. What do you think of it? He goes, great, I'll buy it. Like it was
Yep.
just that simple. The numbers made sense. And then he called me actually because it was very funny because I don't constantly like I'm not going out for commercial clients. I have done a lot of commercial transactions apparently over the last couple of years now, but he called me like a year after that and he closed on that property and he goes, I've been working with this commercial agent. I don't know if you do commercial, but I just feel like he's bullshitting me. He's telling me one thing and it feels like there's something off, etc. And I said, oh, okay. So what's like the issue? And he said it just didn't feel right. It doesn't feel genuine. It doesn't feel like I'm getting a honest response or an honest opinion. I feel like I'm not getting the deal. Like there was just a feeling in his gut. And I said, if you already have him at a property, you go for it. He had an offer out. And he goes, well, what do you think? And I said, honestly, in my opinion, and I did clarify with him if he signed anything. Let me just clarify with everyone here.
Right.
He did not. I just said, I just think if you're going to pay this amount of money for something, like I don't do commercial. I pulled up the comps. I went on Property Shark. I pulled up property records. I figured out in a 2 day spiral how to just do a comp, like almost as if an appraisal we're going to do it for commercial. And I said, I just think it's really high for that area. You're paying the max value and there's not going to be much growth. You're paying for what it's worth. And it's an area that doesn't commonly go up in price. People resell it 10 years later for what they bought it for. So, and I said, I think that maybe you want to do another area and that's closer because he was looking in Suffolk. And then I said, maybe you want to go to Nassau where maybe you have something that is gonna build up. I made a bunch of calls. I met one of the best commercial agents I've actually met who actually was running, she actually ran like a big financial commercial lending firm before she became a commercial agent, one of the top ones pre 2007, 2006. And I said, my client's looking for XYZ. And within I would say a week of me looking with him, we got a property for $2.3 million that he saw the value in growth. And I thought to myself, it was this easy for me to find that. Like
Right.
someone else should be able to find that. And the guy was claiming he was like a big commercial agent XYZ. I just thought it was so interesting. Like, how are you not able to give your client like an honest opinion, the best situation, show them the actual comps of a property? He couldn't even show him the comps. So I was like, as a residential agent, I went out of my way to find all this, figure this out, pay all this money to get this stuff done within under a week. And they had been working for like a year on this. Like,
Not everyone has the same drive, initiative, and caring about getting things done properly, which you do. And so, after watching this podcast, hopefully we'll go viral. But people are going to want to get. How do I get in touch with Jasper Champagne? So can you share either your phone number, email, Facebook, website information so people can contact you?
it's really easy to find me. My hashtag is Jasper Champagne RE. And always feel free to reach out. I prefer honestly, I'm old school. I prefer you give me a call over you sending me a text message or an email, but up to you and what you prefer to how you prefer to reach out. If you're gonna DM me, my notifications are off. So if you are gonna DM me on Instagram or XYZ, just expect a delayed reply there, okay?
Well, you're probably out selling like a $4 million commercial or $10 million residential. So, with that, we've been on the phone we've been on the podcast for a while. We could talk for hours. This could be going on for hours. You are an inspiration. You work your butt off. You don't expect anything. You put in the time. Your clients love you. I love working with you. I know that I can bring any client to you. We work together as a team and you're doing everything that you can to satisfy the clients. That's what it's all about. For another adventures of a real estate broker with Daniel Berger, I'm Daniel Berger, and thank you, Jasper, so much for coming on with us and inspire me all the time. I love talking to you, and I'm sure you're inspiring your clients as well.
Well, thank you so much for having me, man. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. And just thank you for being you and just staying who you have been. You're like, there are so many people that I meet that grow into the level that you've gotten at this point, and they become horrible to work with. And
Well,
you have been so easy and you're always so kind, and you are the best support system for your brokers. And just thank you for just staying true to who you have been since I've met you.
thank you. And then I think, Jasper, this won't be the first time that we're doing this together. I'm sure we'll do it in the future. So, with that, thank you, everyone. And until the next episode. Thanks for joining me on the adventures of a real estate broker. I hope you enjoyed our time together as much as I did. If you laughed, learned something, or just had a good time, do yourself a favor and subscribe to the podcast. A big shout out to our sponsor, Remax Prestige Properties, for making this all possible. Remember to leave a review if you enjoyed the show. It helps more people find us. Until next time, keep it real, keep it fun, and keep exploring the adventures in your neighborhood. I'm Daniel Berger, your New York realtor, and I'll see you in the next episode.